4 games, but now we have to talk to each and every one separately and come to an agreement with those people, and that can take however long it takes. But like that's the process we want to go through because we want to support the development, and that helps those guys pay their bills and keep making new versions and stuff and producing games. But it's been kind of a slow process. Some developers are real tight-lidded, and some of them are like just immediate, like just hey, take it, go for it. But it's been great. It's been really good. Some like working out a lot better than I thought it would work out. So
cool.
But yeah.
Yeah, and we're hoping if you're interested in building VR games, they'll be able to test it there.
Oh yeah, so that's the thing. We came here because I wanted to meet you guys and see what y'all are working on and stuff. Because we're there, once we hope to grow to a physical location outside of Rec Room and get more headsets and get like PlayStation VR and do all that stuff. But we would hope to eventually take some of our profits and then help support like local developers, because then you could test games there, or if you get a finished game, we could promote it there, we could play it there. So just that inner community support stuff we're all about. So hopefully we can do that one day.
Cool.
You have a webpage?
Yeah, arcmemphis.com.
Hey,
yeah. It's Art. There's we gotta update it right now, but arcmemphis. No, just arcmemphis.com. But there's really not much on it right now besides just the logo and the way to book and stuff.
Oh, that's fancy looking.
Yeah, that's that Leland is our CTO. He made the website.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much a landing page right now. We're working on the second variation that has like our build specs on it, our game library, a way to contact us directly, a way for developers to get in touch with us directly.
FAQ and stuff like that.
Going a little slower than we thought.
Yeah,
I think it's some of those things are.
But we started out with the 4 games that Steam gives you, and now how many games we have now?
We're probably like 12 to 16.
Like 12 to 16 games, and a lot of them are real short games and stuff like that. But
one of the things that you were needing was tracking software.
Yeah.
So you could track what people are playing.
Yeah. We're trying to figure out tracking software and a user interface. Basically, a system to track the time of each individual game. Like, so a person could come in, they play that game, and it tracks. Like they only played it for 15 minutes and they switched to another one. Like we need to know how long that was so that we can tell the developer, and then we can transition from paying those guys monthly. Right now we pay a lot of them month to month for the game per device, and if we transition to for shared revenue, we can like decrease that cost and pay them like just literally what we're getting play out of and stuff. And
so the games that are getting played the most can make more money.
Yeah, it'll be more realistic, and then eventually if we had 8 to 10 headsets in a room and a user interface so that people could come in and it would kind of not have to look at our desktop and stuff like that, and they could just access the games directly.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know a lot about C# and Unity and Unreal and stuff, so we're just like, I was hoping to like kind of absorb some of it by checking
Could be a
this
good
out.
student project.
There's a few LAN center software out there, like Smart Launch and stuff like that, that'll track through individual computers what's being played and how long it's played and stuff.
There's a place in Canada called Control V, and they're one of the better known VR arcades right now, and they're selling their own software, but I don't really want to pay. I didn't really like what it looked like and stuff, and I haven't used it or anything. And I'm sure we can, it'd be a business expense, but if we can make it, it'd be a lot easier, I guess. I would think, I don't know, but.
I think the main thing we read out, especially with HTC Vive, the most intensive part of bringing in each new person is explaining how the controllers work, explaining how to adjust the headset. Then they hit a menu button halfway through the game, they get launched back out from the Steam desktop, and they don't know what to do at that point. So we literally have to be, a couple feet from them to help them the whole time. So trying to switch it up into more of an individual experience where they can go in and just jump on the headset, have fun, and we don't have to be sitting there behind them saying, hey, press this every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, let's thanks, John. And
come by anytime, check it out. We're open Thursday through Saturday, 8 to 12 right now.
How many have heard of the Rec Room? A good amount. Okay. So yeah, the Rec Room's on Broad Avenue. It's a really cool arcade / bar. I think some of you are probably too young to be in there, but yeah, it's a really cool place. I like hanging out there too. So awesome.
12 a.m. or p.m.?
8 p.m. We do it at night, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. Just to kind of not have to deal with kids, because the rec room is 18 or 21 and up after 6 p.m. So we just don't want to have to like watch a bunch of kids with $800 headsets on and stuff. So
Yeah.
We've got some false controllers.
Yeah, literally just shut
Everything.
Oh man.
So, but, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's go ahead and start our first talk. Shrek, you want to start? You go first. Okay. Keep my voice on break. Your stuff is up. So there's your that, and then yeah, there's that, and then the Excel sheet's over there. Oh, it's the PDF. I don't have a
down key.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. You gotta do function. Yeah. All right, cool. Can you do that? Are there lights over there?
Nothing. That's all the sound stuff.
All right. Okay. Yeah, no. I'll be right back.
Hey, so I'm Jonathan Schrack with the local game studio Digital Precept, and as my day job, I create virtual reality training simulations for FedEx Express as well. And I was going to go to Oculus Connect. FedEx found out and said, "Oh, we'll make this a business trip." So that's why my badge there says FedEx Express. So for those who don't know, Oculus Connect is the Oculus hosts their own developer conference every year. And it's a developer-focused event. You get to try kind of the new games that are coming out, meet and greet with the devs, attend talks and learn lectures. And I took the catch with FedEx anyway is they made me take notes. It was like basically back in school, wanted to take a note, I have to write a big report paper for them. So just when you graduate, it never escapes. You never get done with reports. So this is kind of like a brief kind of collected notes. Some of this is going to be high level, and some of it's going to be a little deep, low level. So I'll try to keep this short, but feel free to ask questions at the end of it. Because if I gloss over something, it might just be because I thought everyone knew what it was, and I didn't. So, all right. So, first thing, the big thing at Oculus Connect this year. Come on. The big deal, the keynote. So, Oculus revealed some of their new software called the asynchronous spaceport. Currently in VR, you need to hit 90 frames per second. You need to have at least an i5 4590 GTX, like a high-end gaming computer to run VR. Async Space Warp is their new software tech that drops that barrier. You're now allowed to run VR with 45 frames a second, which means it tanked all the minimum specs. You can now just get away with an FX 4350, which is an AMD processor that costs $80, and a GTX 960 or an RX 470. So now you can only need a $500 computer to VR. Now there is a few drawbacks to go into that low specs. We'll talk about that later. For those of you, so for what that means for you, the consumer, that you don't notice it. You're playing your game, whereas before you might have lag or some lost visuals. It runs smooth. It's all under the hood. So as a developer, it's really cool and really neat. For the gamers, it's like all you know, it runs better. Other thing now, it's Oculus Touch controllers. That's their room scale controllers they're coming out with. If you guys have ever come by any of our other meetups where the Mid-South Game Devs has a few pairs of those. Those are $200, December 6th. They also showed off they were currently working on eye tracking and mouth tracking. What's up?
Is that 200 for a pair of controllers?
It's a pair plus a sensor.
Oh, neat.
So, yeah, it comes with a sensor. One thing they also showed off they're working on is working on eye tracking to embed in the headset. And this is the reason why it's taking so long is that your eye functions more like a jelly than a solid. And they even showed a slow-mo video where you see a guy look at something and he looks to the right, you can see the pupil just kind of morph and bend. They said, yeah, that's really hard to track. But they say their goals with that is that with the next generation of headsets, if they can track where your eye's looking, they can then selectively render the scene, which means they can drop the performance requirements even more. Because why would you bother rendering an entire scene when the person's only looking at like a 3-foot space? So
How are they doing the mouth tracking?
that's the thing they didn't talk about. They said they're working on it, but they didn't say, and they did a live demo of it. But from what I can see on stage, they didn't have any extra sensors. However, the Oculus sensors are actually just webcams. They're actually just cameras. So I'm wondering if they figured a way to make the sensors double act as an IR reader and mouth tracker. Or maybe they just cheated the whole thing.
Probably.
So they show a couple 3 new games. Lone Echo, Artica 1, and Robo Recall. I want to talk about those for a minute just because I did get to try them. They did some really neat things with VR. So first off, Lone Echo is like a story player game. It's like the movie Gravity, but they were showing off their 5-on-5 multiplayer. It's basically zero gravity disc golf. And so the first thought was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be puking left and right? You're just floating through space. Well, how does that work? But it's actually very simple. You're just in like kind of an arena. It looks like Ender's Game, only instead of guns that you're just throwing a disc around. You literally just grab off a wall and just push. It is the most natural feeling thing. It's like it doesn't make sense. You're like, wow, why would that work? But then your brain says, I'm pushing off this wall, therefore I should go here. No motion sickness. Article 1 is, they're the studios that did Metro 2033. They're doing their own kind of sci-fi apocalypse Russian shooter. Things they did neat in their demo is that with all the guns, you had a gun range, so you could actually pick up accessories, like pick up magazines, mount laser sights, scopes on it, give you a real visceral feel. And Robo Recall is just, if you're at any of our meetings where we had the Oculus Touch out, that's just bullet train. That's what the game's going to be, Robo Recall. It's just bullet train, all you're shooting robots. So this is the Carmack talk. I'm going to warn you, all of this is kind of like really in-depth because that's who he was. John Carmack is the guy who made the original Doom. He works at Oculus as head of their mobile VR development. And it started as a tradition, Oculus Connect. Someone came up to him with a Gear VR and said, hey, could you try my game? He goes, yeah, sure, but I'm going to tear it apart. And that just became a thing. He did the closing keynote, but he was also in the hallways all day, every day, just trying people's games. And it just became, according to his watch, about 30 hours of just him talking. So I sit for about 6 hours and took a lot of notes over the course of several days. I try to condense it down. So this is really low-level stuff. This is as deep to the code as this presentation is going to get. So he had a really good quote he started the conference with. He said, a lot of games are coasting on the VR novelty. That means they're not, as a game, they're not actually good, but it's neat because VR is new and people want to try it out. He said that they actually turn away, I think he quoted like 80% of the applicants. 20% are okay. They're just okay as games, and then he said that there's a handful that are actually really fun. So then that's when he started diving into his notes. He's trying to build games. The first thing he said was, you want to try to make your intro load time as quick as possible. The reason why, because with VR, you're putting on a headset. It's it's a bit of production. You don't want to sit there and be like, all right, got to sit here waiting. I can't browse the internet, can't check my phone. I just have to sit there in this empty headset waiting for a game to load. No one's going to do that. No one wants to do that. It's boring, right? So he said you want to try to hit that instant gratification where it's just, you put it on, you're in the game. Now, granted, you're going to have high-end games that can't load instantly, but just load something. Load like a menu, load a little level, but then start kind of interacting while you load the big stuff in the background. Other things he had is that with VR, we still have to have low-resolution screens, especially in the Gear VR. If you're a developer, you'll know what Heightmaps and trilinear filters are. I put that one in there because he just hammered home on every single game he tried. He said, use Heightmaps, use trilinear filters. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. If you'll do what it means, do it. That's what he said. Even then, he said these are guidelines. You want to make your game look nice on VR, you're going to have to do a lot of optimization. Another thing he talked about was look at Nintendo games, because Nintendo, until the Wii U, did not use HD. They used the old yellow, white, and red cords to plug into your TV. What that means is that effectively they only had like 50 pixels across on an NTSC TV. So they had to design all their user interfaces in regards to that. Now in VR, worst case scenario, like the PSVR, you only have, I think it's about 500 pixels across. But that's still really good design considerations to take into place. Because Nintendo is well known for having really polished high-end interfaces. Another thing pointed out is that players won't turn their heads if they can avoid it. I can personally test that. I had a UI, I have buttons over here. I'm like, all right, turn to the right and push that button. And the player rotates the in-game character and no, just grab your head, turn it to the right. People don't think about it because you've been playing video games for 15, 20 years now where you're just looking at a screen. It's not in your nature to physically have to turn your head. Once you're in the game, you're used to interacting in the game. So his advice for that was treat it kind of like you have your main real estate directly in front of the player. And you can put things off to the side out of view if you want to, but make those optionals. And the example he gave is imagine a carousel, right? You have your main options here, sound off to one side, video off to the other side. You can easily look to the left or look to the right to get to those options, but you always want to make sure the player can then just also move the thumbstick left and right to rotate around. Because players will never want to move their heads. It's because it's just, again, it's unintuitive. VR is still new, so people will still have those old habits. Another just straightforward advice, I said, just use sans serif fonts. We don't have really high screen resolution. No one's going to see all the little fancy tails and heads and pips and whatnot in your font. Just plain simple. Do not use transparencies in your UI because that can actually cause sim sickness. And the reason why is that if you look at your hand really close to your face and then immediately look to something far away, your eyes do two things. First, they converge onto the point, and then they focus. In VR, though, there's no focusing element because the screen is just 3 inches from your face. Your eyes only reverge, is what it calls it, where it looks to something close, looks to something far. In a transparency, since there's none of that focusing factor, you could be reading a word and then your eye will like just flick to the right in between a word and then try to focus through it. And eventually you can train yourself to not do that. But to people that are new to it, like I know when I was first doing VR, you start getting a headache looking at all these transparencies because your eyes are constantly twitching back and forth. And eventually if you try to power through it, you can start making yourself sick. So that's just the big do not do this for now. In the future, it might get better, or if you have certain ways you built your game. Again, these are all rules of thumb, they're not laws. In that regard, though, dealing with, again, low screen resolution, you recommended just feather the edges, use a little bit of transparency on the edges, just so that way you don't have that hard, crisp line. That way it hides the anti-aliasing. The last one, use audio cues. Like, that should go for anything, VR or not. But it's like almost, again, every app he tried was just hammered on. It's like you need make a noise when you hover over something you can click on, make another noise when you click on it, and a third noise when you back out. It doesn't need to be fancy, it can just be a click or a chime or something simple. But that way, if you don't have that in the game and you don't know, did you hover over it? Is your cursor in the right place? Is it working? Is the game frozen? You want those audio cues, because in the player, it just reinforces what they already know. You're used to when you're on your computer, you click your mouse, you hear a click. Or if you're on your phone, you hear the click noise. People are already ingrained into that. And you want to build off those ingrained intuitions. These last two are like really specific to Oculus, but the reason why I put them on here is you have lag in a game on a headset. When you turn your head, everything goes really blurry. The most common things in games are obviously on-screen elements, HUD elements. Oculus, I believe Vive does as well, what's called layers. This is really developer rendering, but it's a way you can cheat. You can basically tell Vive or Oculus that, hey, render this first, then deal with anything else. That way your game could be running like a PowerPoint slideshow, 15 frames, but it renders your HUD's nice and smooth, people don't notice. This last one is Gear VR, but I've actually seen it on my desktop at home, just regular games. Depends on your monitor, really. Don't ever do pure blacks and pure whites because sometimes monitors have really bad refresh rates on those high-end bright colors and high-end black colors. But again, that's really going to be based on your hardware. All right, we all survived, no one died, cool. That's probably as deep as this is going to get. All right, so audio. Spatialized 3D audio is awesome in VR. What 3D audio is what it sounds like. Audio is emanating from a point in space somewhere in your VR world. Spatialized just takes that to the next step. It modulates the sound based on where your head's rotated to mimic how your ear canal works. And when you try it in VR, it sounds great. It sounds like something's really there. So the question though is you ever think about when you see like Star Wars, right? The climatic scene, the lightsaber battles, you see the swords clanging, Duel of Fates is playing in the background. You can see the sound effects coming off those lightsabers. That's called diegetic. You see where the sound's coming from. You don't see people singing the Latin chants for Duel of Fates. You don't see the violinists off screen, unless they're like in the pit underneath Obi-Wan, like furiously playing away in the darkness. That's what we call non-diegetic. Non-diegetic sound is for creating emotion and ambience in a scene. The problem with VR, though, is that now since you're in the scene, it's really hard to, it kind of takes you out of it, because it's just either A, it's not 3D, so it's just this music that's just kind of playing. Either your brain's like, do I have headphones on, or where's this music coming from? Or just, it doesn't sound, or you can have it emanating, but from like a random point in space, because then the players can walk around like, hey, there's the soundtrack. It's floating there in space. I don't know where it's come from, but it's doing something. So they've been trying to figure out how to do this, and their audio team met with a bunch of filmmakers, and they created what they call ambisonic audio. Now that term actually applies from surround sound systems, but basically it's a skybox for audio. It's a neat trick they employed, and I got to try it out. It actually works really cool. There's basically an invisible compass around the player. A north point in front of them, south point behind them, and a west point to the left, and an east point to the right. And then they'll have sound effects playing from those points. Like if you're in a hangar bay, you'll hear jet engines over here, mechanics talking over there. Or if it's music, you might actually hear like drums here, cellos there. The neat thing about it though is that while it moves with the player, like you can't walk past it, it doesn't rotate with you. So when I'm sitting in the game, I can always know that somewhere in the north of me is like the cellos playing. Or somewhere over to the right of me is a jet engine firing off. So it really does kind of fake a really nice ambient sound and ambient music as well. So if you're like in Unity, you can just create that yourself. Just, you got 4 audio sources, just throw it on the player, you're done. Let's see. SSQ. This is actually, it wasn't a direct talk. Actually, a bunch of devs were doing a demo and they talked about using this. So this is our SSQ scores. I'm like, yeah, it's really, I don't know what that means. So I had to look it up. Simulator Sickness Questionnaire. Back in the 80s when the military was sort of starting to use simulators for training, they needed a way to be able to gauge how sick people were getting from the simulators. Because some people are just like, oh, my stomach doesn't feel good, or I got a headache, or, well, how does my headache rate to your stomach? That this is a simulator sickness questionnaire. Is they developed a system that you punch in all these symptoms and it gives you a quantifiable number. Now again, it's just a number. It's not. If I said my SSQ score is 15, well, that doesn't mean anything. Now, if you said my SSQ score from all my players was 45, but now it's 20, that means, hey, you cut your sim sickness in half. It means you made a lot of improvements. So it is like a quantifiable sickness number, but again, there's not like a threshold. You're not going to go out there and find someone, you have to get this number at this point. Actually, and so we're actually going to use that at FedEx. I brought the PowerPoint, the Excel sheet. It's literally just this. It's just, hey, on a scale of 0 to 3, what's your discomfort, what's your fatigue, what's your headache? You do a pre-check. So that way, if someone's already feeling sick to their stomach, you don't want that to skew it off. So then they come out of it and they just do their post-check. I'm just going to bake some numbers and say this person's really sick. They're having a bad day. Whoa, Cortana, come down. Calm down, Cortana. All right. And so, and this is what it spits out. So in our fictional scenario where a guy wasn't feeling really well, before he even got in the simulator sickness, before in the sim, it rated him at 37, and came out of it like probably hurling his guts, and he got a 90 on the way out. And so kind of comparing it, you can see like the delta of that, the difference is 52 points. That's really, really bad. But from what I've seen online, people I talked to said it's like 20 is what they seem to be the normal, and just playing with the numbers of just very few symptoms at all. 20 to 30. That's again, it's all relative. Don't take anything as the gold standard. It's just that if you're trying to if you're having a lot of QA testing coming through, get people to try this. That way, then you can click some quantifiable numbers to say, all right, we did this. The numbers said this. So, and if anyone wants it, this will be up on we'll probably throw this somewhere up on game devs chat somewhere or just email me or Ernest, probably Ernest because everyone has him. So, all right. Other talks were on VR user interactions. A few key points for that, and I'm talking about when you have 3D hand controllers, like the Vive wands or the Oculus Touch controllers. Rule number 1, user's hand is the authoritative data source. Wherever their hand is in space, you can't move that. That's their hand. They get to control that. I can't take that 3D model and put it somewhere else because their brain's going to go hold up what's going on. Either A, they'll be really confused, or B, they'll think your game's broken. So it doesn't matter if you did this intentionally, it looks broken. Second, this was rule I see broken a lot, and I'm guilty of this as well. Anything that can be interacted with, like pushing a button, picking an object up, whatever, needs to have some type of feedback. If I'm trying to turn the dial, when I get my hand within range, that dial needs to light up, it needs to make a noise, maybe have a text pop up. The more user feedback, the better. It seems like even an obvious thing that might not be necessary. However, at FedEx, what we're doing right now is we're creating simulators for 767 planes. And we have all 256 buttons in the cockpit and dials modeled and interactable. And for people, those of us developing it, it's no problem. We're flipping switches, pushing buttons like we're real pilots, but we don't get paid $2 million. When actual pilots and mechanics come in, they're sitting there pawing at the air, and it's I can't grab this dial. I'm the dial's over here, and you're 5 inches away. The reason why is that VR headsets are sighted in at 6 feet. So if you have never tried one before, your brain is trying to depth perception is saying, hey, I should be within range, because your brain is used to looking at things at infinity. But we messed up all the lensing, so now your brain says, wait, am I there? Am I not there? That's why you have to have feedback. Rule number 3, don't ever change controls. And this is number 3 and number 4 go together. When you're in the headset on, you can't see the controller, right? I spent the whole game knowing to push one button that I can't see. Don't suddenly put that button somewhere else, because I'm not going to know where it is. Plain and simple. With number 4, it's highly recommended that if you don't have an in-game model in the player's hands of the controller itself, to like put a poster somewhere in the game, or maybe have it highlight. Just players, unless they're like expert gamers that play this game all the time, they're not going to know what the controller looks like. You know, I mean, think about how many times you play with your friends that aren't like super hardcore or whatever. They're like, what button's X? Well, now you just put a headset on them. They're like, I don't know what button's X. You're telling me to you're pointing at something, telling me to push it. I literally am wearing a headset. I can't see what you're talking about. So, another thing that's really funny, if you do any type of physics, hands have infinite mass, because I can sit here and throw a punch and nothing's going to stop my punch. So when I punch some dude, if you have physics enabled, it's going to act like he just got hit by a truck. Because like, you know, in real life, you hit something, your hand's going to stop. There's mass. My hands keeps going. And as far as in the world of physics, that means it's infinite mass. I'm punching with black holes. Be prepared to deal with that. So, and it's actually really funny if you just don't deal with it, because then you'll just have like punching away buildings. It's really funny for the first 5 minutes. But then when you try to make more stuff in your game, you're like, oh, let me grab this cup. Oh, there goes that coffee cup. All right. This is miscellaneous, just I'm not going to fit anywhere else. And some of this is a little low level, some is a little bit high level. A lot of the devs that recommended meet the minimum requirements for your game, but don't just stop there. Add more features that enable when you have higher requirements. This was from the talk from the guys that are doing a game called Arizona Sunshine. It's supposed to be a realistic zombie survival shooter. And they're showing how, like, if you have an i5, here's the basic game, it's fine. You have an i7, they added extra features, like now you have fully destructible environments. You can shoot out wood planks on the side of a building. They have fully simulated wind. If you throw a grenade, you can see the shockwave go through and dynamically like flutter blinds and cloth. But they're not going to be able to do that on i5. So it says, hey, you have an i7? All right, buddy, we're going. It's going to be great. So that's what their recommended is. And that kind of applies to a lot of video games. You know, don't just be satisfied hitting the minimum. Really push it if you can, but don't just completely abandon the minimum either. You need a balance there. And this way, what you'll say will happen is that then you'll be driving players like, oh, this game is really fun. It'd be better if I had a nicer graphics card, and you'll push players to buy and upgrade their machines. Not that you really care, but it just kind of nicely advances the market, and it gives players a reason to buy better machines. Other thing is, Intel actually came out with their own analyzers called GPU View and Graphics Performance Analyzer. If you're ever trying to debug your game, you cannot figure out why it's lagging and running so slow, check out those tools, because it'll show you the direct motherboard readouts. It's really confusing, don't ask me how. I just like, that looks really cool. I'm just gonna write this down and save it when I need it. Adaptive performance versus async space warp. So as I previously talked about with async space warp, there's another tool that Unity's had for a while. It's actually built into Unity, and both Vive and Oculus have this. It's called adaptive performance. So what happens is that if your game's not hitting the target frame rate, your default the game renders at about, I think, 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, and it sends that to your headset. It will start shrinking that to 900 by 900, 800 by 800, until you can hit 90 FPS. And what the player notices is that the game's still running smooth, but suddenly things are getting grainier as resolution drops. That's like an async space warp is an alternate. It's not a replacement. They both do different things, but they don't work together. Async space warp only kicks in when you get really bad frames. If you're using adaptive performance, you'll never hit those frames. Why you would use one or the other? Well, async space warp will give you crisp visuals. However, as I'll show you in the next slide, it does some weird, funky stuff with movement. Whereas adaptive performance will give you the exact same movement and animations, but your visuals get really grainy. One thing Carmack pointed out is that there's no daily maintenance game for VR yet. And he's talking about games where like think about mobile games where it's like, oh, hey, I need to log in today to collect my whatever points. You know, something I do for 10 minutes every day. He says there's currently not a game for VR that does that. And that's what he thinks will probably be the next big thing to go for. Just a daily game. Hey, I pop on the headset for a few minutes, play for 5, all right, come back tomorrow. That's his 2 cents though. While they're there, there was a panel on Q&A. Unfortunately, it was not like testing out games. It was like if you're running a QA company. But some interesting takeaway points is in VR, you don't want to burn out your test team. You don't want to burn them out, period, but in VR, it's more of a danger. Because if you have like 30 VR testers, but like 15 of them get sick, well, I can't use them for the next day on your games. You're just kind of wasting your own time and money. Other things is like if you're testing a horror game, well, once they've seen the jump scare, there's no more jump scare, right? How do you test scary things with that if you burnt them out? Like, oh, okay, yeah, this is where the scary stuff is. It's not scary to me anymore. Other things he said is if you're testing mobile VR, you need like 1 billion phones. At least the very minimum 5 phones per model per user. Because with mobile phones, as they overheat, the processor slows down and you start seeing glitches in games. That's not a glitch on your part, that's just the phone heated up. However, there's not a way to cool off phones. They just have to toss one to the side, grab a fresh phone. And kind of the endpoint he said is like, unless you're trying to do a company that does nothing but QA, contract out because it'll just kill your budget as a new studio. I did get to talk to a few venture capitalists, and some of the notes I took from them were if focus on your grand vision when you talk to VCs. They don't care about your first game. They want to know where you're going to take this from there. They're looking on the long-term investments. They're looking for the type of people say like this is their life work, not your part-time side gig. This is like you quit your day job to do this like 24/7. That's the people they're looking for, because then that communicates that you have the drive and skill to do it, and in turn they can supply the funds. One thing to point out, you guys have seen like Fallout has its own VR game coming out, Doom has its own VR game. If you notice, none of that's actually made by Bethesda. It's all actually little small indie studios that no one's heard of. Currently in the scene, none of the big dogs are in, so if you're trying to get like an officially licensed IP, just jump for it. Because like they'd rather give it off to a small indie team, because if they flop and fail, whatever, no money out of their pocket. Whereas if they try to invest all their millions of dollars, time, and manpower into a game that could flop, well, they're going to be on the street looking for a job, because some of the higher ups are going to be saying, you just blew $2 million. So, yeah, last slide I have. This is what I was trying to talk about with async spaceport. So what you see on the left, you didn't need that, Aaron, it's fine. So you see on the left here, like this is a full frame rate. It's a ball kind of moving in a curve. Now, when you drop frame rate, you're only getting every other frame. Well, you get this weird judder. Async time warp, which is the current way they're trying to handle it, you get this kind of zigzag motion because it's trying to guess the next frame. On the other end, we have space warp, which is the new way. And this is where you can see it's not perfect. This is where I was talking about you get some weird effects with curved motion, non-linear stuff. It's because it looks at the last 2 frames to guess the next one. And for stuff that's going in a curve, there's no real way to guess that accurately. And that's where there's that adaptive performance versus async space warp argument comes in. If you have a game where you have a lot of curves going on, and it's really important for the player to know that, you're going to want to use adaptive performance. But if that's not an issue, but you have a game that's got like a lot of text in it or a lot of just fine details the player needs to see, they want to go with space warp. And again, that's just kind of up to you as a developer to choose which one works for you, which ones doesn't. And I guess I know this is like a lot of high-end stuff. You're not like in the Oculus, but I try to keep this really high level. I attended an hour-and-a-half lecture, and I took this one slide from it to try to condense it down for you guys. So that's the end. Questions? So now I just like dumped a lot of data.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. All right. Again, that's just an overview. As of like 20 minutes ago, Oculus posted all of their lectures online, so you can just go and watch the videos.
Oh, neat.
So, cool.
I got one question.
What's up?
Comparatively, how much more difficult is it to make a game on the Oculus than it is, like a PC game?
As far as like design choices go, it's not much more difficult. It just kind of becomes to a mechanic. For example, like in a regular flat game, as I'm going to use versus VR, you still have a camera in a scene that looks at stuff. Well, in VR, now that camera's attached to the player's head. However, there's some design choices come in because you can't have on-screen elements now. Because on-screen elements in the VR world are going to be sitting on top of your eyeball. They're worthless. You can't see them. So you can't have an on-screen UI. You have to figure out what data do you need to communicate. Like if this is a racing game, where are you going to put the speed? All right? It's easy if you're in the car because I can just put it on the dashboard. Makes sense. Other things to catch is where all this kind of shenanigans comes in is performance. You have a much, much, much more stringent performance. Like in a traditional flat game, I think it's like 40 milliseconds a frame to process, whereas in VR it's 10. So you have about 1/4 of the processor time. It is just, you can't have all your like super fancy particle effects and physics going at the frame. However, as far as developing that, I like to just throw everything in there and just start taking out stuff that's unnecessary to get the target I need. But that's just going to be on your own style. Some people like to start the other way, get the bare minimum and start adding on polish. I wouldn't say it's much more difficult. The most difficult part is just getting the hardware and computer specs up and running.
Like, PC games, you're like, oh, press this button to go. You know, instead you have to press, in VR game, you'd have to press a button. You know, how would you, no, never mind.
As far as that goes, it's like, again, it's a design considerations. The player can't see the controllers.
Yeah.
So it's like what one of Carmack points, or one of the VR touch points said, is you need to either have an in-game like 3D model of the controller, like sitting where the player's hands are, so I can basically fake looking at the controller, or try to make some more intuitive way to do it.
But like in the VR game,
Oh, you mean actually moving the player around?
yes.
Yeah, that's the thing you can't do in VR is rotate a player.
How do you get it so that the button is over there, and if the player is near that button and presses whatever the trigger, it activates that button?
That's not really unique to VR. That's just going to be, you have to figure out, I don't know, in that case I would say, hey, just throw a collision box. That way when the player's within 5 feet and their hand's within 3 inches, hey, they can push the button. You know, it's just design consideration.
Physics engine kind of handles
So it's not like
Yeah.
super difficult. Like you know.
Yeah, it's just a different way of thinking it. It's like going from an automatic transmission car to a manual transmission. You're still driving a car, but you got to think about things differently. Any other questions?
All right. We go further. We're going to do the raffle.
Go ahead. Let's go ahead.
So.
out, I'm gonna leave.
Did I miss anyone's name here? Is anyone not on this list that wants to be on the list? So the game we're going to raffle away is, I think it's Company of Heroes for PC, and there's like 4 DLCs that are with it. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to raffle it, and then I'll get your email, and I'll just email the Steam keys to you. So anyone else want to be on this list? All right, I'm going to click on the randomizer, and Dale, congratulations. I've already got your email. Okay, so and I think what we'll do is we're going to try to do this like every meetup. We'll have some cheap Steam game to raffle away, or maybe even like some game development books or game dev software. So we'll have a couple different things to raffle out. Maybe some old CS books.
So only one is being paid?
Yeah. Well, next time we might, because I only have one copy of the game.
What game is it?
Not Game of Thrones. Company of Heroes. But next time
Company
I'll
of
try
Heroes?
to. Say again?
Company of Heroes, was it?
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
Next time though, we'll try to maybe have a couple things to raffle out. Free trials to cross-browser testing, maybe. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick thing on tile mapping. It'll literally take like 15 minutes. I just think it's kind of cool. If you've ever seen, so Justin here is going to talk about actually using Heightmaps to build terrain objects. But tile mapping can be really nice for building things like tiled dungeons, and you can do it directly in Unity. But the problem is you have to move something onto the scene. You're working in a 3D environment, and then you have to vertex snap it to make sure they're perfectly in place. And then you build this entire dungeon out, and then you might realize that some of your tiles are off a little bit, and then you have to readjust the whole thing, and it becomes a pain in the butt. So tile mappers or tile mapping software is really nice because it kind of lets you just paint stuff onto a 2D image. Now, even though it's a 2D image, And you can, like this is tiled, T-I-L-E-D map editor, and it can attach properties to all your tiles so that you can, and it just saves in JSON format or CSV, or there's a couple of different formats it saves in, and you can bring that into Unity. And even though this is in 2D, you can go through all the tiles and look at those properties. Maybe you have a name that names the mesh, and then you just load the mesh that has that name. So each one of the tiles, instead of loading a 2D image, you load a 3D mesh instead. So even though you're doing 2D now, and it kind of only works for flat terrain, but you can do multiple layers. So you can say, layer 1 is your base floor level, floor 1, and then you can have another layer on top of that, which can be the second level of your dungeon, or third level on top of that, which is the third level of your dungeon, or it can just be stuff that you can climb on top of. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Another cool thing that Tile does is it does do kind of natural terrain baking. So let's create a new one here. You can create multiple terrain types, orthogonal, so that's just squares, and then isometric, which is, you're sure you all played like Diablo or kind of RTS games where you're using kind of diamond-shaped blocks. So we're just doing orthogonal. You specify the map size, the width of the tile, hit OK, and so you get a screen like this. Here's your properties. These, when you export this thing, which you can just go to export, and you can choose, different files for them. JS, you can do JavaScript, cool. JSON, CSV, even Lua, and it will have all this property information. So the first thing we want to do is actually load in a tile set. And here you choose the name, so we're going to browse for some that it comes with. Desert tiles. The main part of this is you do have to say what the width of the tile is and how much margin is between the tiles. So I know that this tile set has 1 pixel margin between each tile. That would be something that you probably want to load up in an editor and just look at the pixels. Because I found once you load it up into the tile editor, you can't change it. You have to unload it and load it back in again. So these are pretty, the example that I'm loading actually comes with tile editors. There's not much to have to change here. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Yeah. So this is kind of like, this is just a image, but it's a tile, it's set up in tiles, and it's 32 pixels each, so I can choose different parts of this. So I can just choose this and then draw some brick. Draw some sand, and so on. So this is just kind of basic painting. Whatever tile I choose is whatever gets painted on. Now, tile editor, what we can do is we can actually convert this, because there's actually, if you see, there's 4 different types of tiles in here. We have brick, we have sand, we have like rough stone, and then kind of cobblestone. And you'll notice that we have every variation of the borders between sand and stone. And what you can do with what this tile can do is actually turn this into a paintbrush where it will handle all the borders for you. So like if I, like this border right here, like let's say I wanted to draw that top right there so that I could put some sand up top. So I have to literally select 2 different tiles to do that. So if I use this one, this doesn't look right. It's, it's drawn. Let me make this, there we go. Is that a little bit better? A lot better. So this doesn't look right at all. So what we're going to do is first let me erase everything. And so the benefit of tile editor is that instead of having to grab these tiles and put them together in Unity and vertex snap them and then put others in and duplicate that to build out the board, I can just paint it on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to create a terrain. I don't remember how to do this. So we're going to edit terrain information. So I'm going to create a new terrain, and this is going to be my sand. And so what I'm doing is I tell Tile where all the sand is. And so I'm just really just drawing over all this. And I'm only going to do 1 or 2 terrains for the sake of time. Hopefully I'm doing this right. So I'm actually subdividing these tiles. Okay, let's see if we did that right. So what we're going to do, let's get this one too. And then I'm going to create another one called, we'll call this dark cobblestone. And here I'm going to choose this right here. So right now what I've done is I've highlighted what part of this is dark cobblestone and what part of this is sand. And normally you do the rest for the rest of these tiles. But I'm just going to use these, close this. Now when we go to terrain, we have 2 options. We have sand and cobblestone. So, oops, it's not working. Oh, wait. Whoa. Okay, maybe I do have to edit the whole thing. But you can kind of see there how it was trying to figure out what the borders are. The only problem is it looks like I did it wrong. No, that's not on it. So let's go ahead and do the others as well. So let me get sand, let me get the rest of this here. And do the last one, which is, we'll call this rocks. Okay, let's see if that worked. Drawing some rocks, and we get some sand. So here you can see how it goes ahead and deals with bordering issues. So it kind of solves that for us. So now I don't have to choose the tile that deals with this corner to place it there. The terrain system is already handling that for me. So it can be really nice for drawing terrain, and then this can be mapped to meshes inside of Unity, which I'm not going to show you here, but I am going to show you that you can use properties. So each one of these I can create a custom property. So let's say, let's go back to our tile set. So this tile right here, we could give a custom property that says mesh, and that mesh will be our, let's say we have a mesh called inner cobblestone. And then in Unity, you'd simply just have a script that reads through this and instantiates all your meshes based on where those tiles are. And you don't have to do any vertex snapping. You don't have to, manually create this. So you can make your workflow a lot faster by painting it in Tile Editor, importing it into Unity, and writing a script, or using an asset. There's assets out there that already do this for you. And simply just running it, and it creates your 3D world out of this 2D tile map. And let me just export this so I can show you what the JSON looks like. And where is it? I saved it to the desktop, didn't I? Okay, so it's saved to the desktop, but I don't see it.
Is that on the bottom there?
No.
That's it, test.json, the Internet Explorer.
Oh. Sneaky Internet Explorer. Oh, great. Internet Explorer. Oh, let me save this file for you. Here, let's open this up. Something that isn't AIDS. So you can just kind of see the JSON format here. We have our tiles laid out. So it's numbered the tiles here. So each tile has an ID. So that's very easy to kind of parse. And then we have our map properties, and then we have our tile set information. What each, even our terrain information. And I'm looking for that custom property. Oh, yeah. That's tile property types. So even here we have our custom property mesh inner cobblestone. So if you're using JavaScript, you can just parse this and it gives you an object. If you're using C#, you can use a JSON parser to parse it as well. Probably the best thing to do is to just spend $10 on a Unity asset that does it for you. So that's all I want to show. I want to keep it quick, and it looks like we got that in 15 minutes. Any questions? Good. Oh gosh, ruined my icons forever. Justin, want to go next? Because it's kind of same. So he's going to talk about Heightmaps, which is a lot prettier than what I was showing you. You're going to use your laptop, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to unplug mine. HDMI?
Yeah.
There we go. That way I can actually charge my laptop for a little bit.
Oh, wow. That sounds good.
This was track.
There it goes.
So yeah, so instead of taking a 2D approach to this, I'm gonna generate some 3-dimensional landscapes. The example that I have today, before I just flat out tell you, what is yellow? What is? Can anyone tell me what that is?
A stormwood?
No. It's
That is a height map.
It's a landscape. I'll give you that much.
Is it a mountain?
It is a mountain.
The Perlin noise? Or Vornai noise?
No.
Is it an Appalachian?
It's a grayscaled height map of Mount Everest. So this is what we're going to take into Unity today and actually build a mountain. So, what you're going to need, I get all my Heightmap data from a site called terrain.party. For everything I've ever needed, it's worked well enough for me. My only complaint is that a lot of the data isn't very high resolution. Like, as far as I know, you can only get 1K Heightmaps, which if you're trying to build a massive landscape, it's too low res, but you get the basic features there. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get this put in Unity. But after that, you'll need some image editing software if you want. Sometimes you have to resize it, your image, your height-map, or if you actually want to paint a height-map by hand, that's totally an option. And for Unity, I think the textures, they have to be, the dimensions have to be in the power of 2 anyway, so you have to go in and resize that. And like I said, the 1K images, I think when you get them raw, they're like 1080 something by another number, so you have to resize them to 1024 by 1024. There's a Unity extension that'll actually read the height-map data and build it onto your terrain. And that's completely free. It's on wiki.unity3d.com. I can actually supply that editor extension for you if anyone actually wants it. So everything is free. And this, I'm sure there's a better way to do what I'm trying to do here, but this method works for me pretty well. I've done this exact method for kind of a personal project I'm working on, and it gets the job done. So, and this is literally all you need to get to do it. So let's, I'm going to shut up here and actually open up Unity and get this started. So, first things first, let me actually show you Terrain Party. And I'm not even using it for the purpose it was built for, because it's referencing city skyline. So people have taken this and built out levels and an actual game elsewhere. So
this is like actual satellite images?
Yeah. I don't know like sources. I just know that it works for me, so I don't care. But like you get a bunch of sources to choose from here. Let me show you. So let's just go to like Mount Everest, and I'll show you what the download looks like. So it looks like it's spelled Everest. That's cool. Everestist. There we go. So you'll see that we have this grid hovering over Mount Everest, and there are a couple of tools over here. You can resize your grid. The smallest terrain party goes down to is 8 square kilometers, so it's a big height map. It's gonna generate a lot of info for you. And like I said, that's a problem because you're trying to build 64 kilometers from a 1K image. It works well enough, but you don't get a lot of those fine details. But if you just download this, I've already downloaded it, so I'll go ahead and show you that. You'll get a little folder called terrain.zip, and you get a couple of different sources. I'll open these up for you. Like that one looks pretty normal. The merged is literally just a merged height map of all 3. That one's a little blurry, but you get the idea. You need a grayscale image to make this work. And I've already taken the liberty of opening this up and resizing everything just to save a little bit of time. So let's see here. I'm actually just gonna I'll create a new project for you here. Give me 1 second. What Windows? Okay, so this is just your basic Unity scene that you open up with in any any normal project. So let's go ahead and create that terrain object, and you're going to see we kind of get this flat quad. It's not very impressive. I'll come back to that later. So that's the terrain we're going to turn into Mount Everest. To get that extension into Unity, we're going to have to import that. And to mess with the editor interface, you actually have to create a new folder in your assets called editor. And I have that script on my desktop, so I just have to import it. Heightmap for texture. And there we go. You notice that we now have a new option up here called terrain, and we can just build a terrain there. So let's actually get our height map into Unity here. Folder. Stick with call materials. Okay, so to import your height map, there are a couple of important things you have to keep in mind. Again, the image dimensions have to be in the power of 2, so 1024 by 1024, so on and so forth. For really big height maps, if you can get higher resolution data, get it. And this part's important, otherwise this entire tool breaks. For the texture type, you have to change that from texture to advanced. And then there's a little checkbox called read write enabled. Make sure that is checked so your tool can actually read the grayscale image and build data from that. So let's apply those changes. Go back to our terrain. And the Mount Everest terrain that I grabbed, I just got a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer sample. So let's go ahead and change that on our terrain here. So you'll see that we have terrain, width, length, and height. So 10 kilometers. Oh, and I'm pretty sure the base unit in Unity is 1 meter. Like if you ever, I'm getting a couple miles up here, so I think I'm right. So we'll just say 10 kilometers, and I think, I don't remember the height off the top of my head, but we'll just plug in like 6,000 meters, 6 kilometers, and we'll just see what that does. So let's apply those changes to our height map. Very good. So if I've done my job correctly, we have our height map, we have our terrain object, it's scaled appropriately. Looks like we're good to go. So if we go over here, have your terrain selected, and height map from texture. Select your texture. And boom, we now have a mountain in front of us, and that took like 5 minutes.
And I see that you're clipped into the mountain. Well, not anymore. But
Do what now?
I see that you were clipped into the mountain.
Oh yeah, yeah. But you'll notice that like there are all these weird ledges along the mountain. Again, that's because the height map data is really low res. You could go and blur that out a little bit farther and get some more fine details. But Unity has built-in terrain tools where you can smooth that out yourself. The takeaway here is that you can build massive landscapes really quickly and build in the fine details later when you have the time. So that's pretty much all I got.
Can you zoom out a little bit, like kind of
Oh,
an
yeah.
overhead view, just so we can kind of see the.
Let me actually make that a little bit bigger too. Where's that? Oh, there it is. But yeah, what you're looking at is a 100 square kilometer.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm running this on a laptop, so it's not super resource intensive right now. I think, yeah, it's got a GeForce 940 mobile version of it. So, and I think I can make this work. I'm going to try one thing really fast. Like if you edit your height map. Okay, let's just start with paint. So black is how low the height map is, white is how high it is. So if we were to just like grab a brush here, we'll make that larger. There we go. We're gonna have a weird looking mountain. So let's save that. Unity should pick up that change over here, I think. Maybe not. Here, let's record it. Here it is. And I wonder if it'll pick that up. I don't think so. I may have to rebuild that terrain form.
carpet.
Oh wait, I know what I did. It's I did. I goofed. Of course it's not going to do it. Well, you kind of get the main idea. If you wanted to, you could edit your grayscale image and it'll pick up those changes. It's just, it broke in my live demonstration, but that's the gist of it. So.
Cool. Alright, do you still want to do yours here?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully there's enough power. Let me turn off a broadcaster.
That's cool. All right, I'm gonna need you to open up something on my laptop. When it's ready.
That folder should be on the desktop.
Cool.
Oh no, all my secret projects. All those names are copyrighted. Yeah, I didn't upgrade Unity just because our class started at 5.4, and so I didn't want them to have to upgrade in case new stuff comes out.
Well, hopefully this won't break everything.
No console errors, that's good.
Good deal. All right.
Whoa, what's on sale? Voxel Man? I'll look at that when I get home. Yeah, so the Unity Asset Store is almost like they do Steam sales pretty much. Like they've got all this cool stuff on there. So if you wanted to implement something, I would look it up on the Asset Store first, because you're better off probably spending $30 and saving you 2 months of dev time. And they always run sales. They run same kind of Steam sales, like summer sales, winter sales. They have a 24-hour sale where they pick one asset and it goes on sale every. You can also publish your own stuff to this too. So if you a modeler or you've made some cool effects or some tool in Unity that you think would be really nice, you can submit it to the Asset Store. I think Shrek, you've got stuff on the Asset Store too, yeah. So it's real easy to put stuff up on there.
All right, so now that you've got your nice, beautiful height map terrain and levels all built out, now you want to throw this online and make like a online deathmatch type thing. The first thing, well actually the very first thing you have to do is you need to enable your multiplayer services. And is this thing even online?
Yeah, it's the laptop's online, yeah.
Put a cramp in everything. Okay. You might need to sign in here. I mean, I could sign in, but. That is, nah, that's fine. Maybe. I think you're part of my group. Oh, I didn't have to do it. Oh well. That's fine. The first thing you have to do is actually, you need to go online to their services, which I think is this cloud, Unity 3D.
There's a services tab up there,
Where is it?
right next to the Unity on that top bar.
Here we go, services. So this is a list of like all the services that Unity actually provides for you. Most of these will be provided to you when you get Unity Plus or Unity Pro. I think all of them are also available separately as well. But for our purposes, we're going to enable multiplayer. Which is different from most services. Most services will, you pay per concurrent user. Like if you're using the Photon networking engine, they'll give you, I think it's 20 concurrent users globally for free. And then after that, it's like 50 and 100 concurrent users. You'll pay, you know, $35 or $100 a month to keep that active. For Unity, they pay per gigabyte. So it, depending on what your actual bandwidth usage is going to be, is how much that you actually pay. So you only pay for whatever you use. So that's going to be really game specific. But they do have a nice little calculators here that you can try to estimate how much it'll actually be, depending on whether it's turn-based or real-time or super real-time, and also how many players you got.
Can you crank both of those up just to see?
Yeah.
Crank all those sliders up. See how much it costs.
So it gets stupid expensive. If you're like, you know, Overwatch with 500,000 players and super fast action, that's a lot of dollars.
Can you also just crank the players down and see the fast action?
Which ones
More
that pay $1?
indie online experience.
Yeah. As long as each player gives you $1 every month, then.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is why you know DLC is such a big thing, and why it's such hard to do these things without having like a monthly subscription plan. So don't be too hard on developers when they're pimping their skins and other things for a little bit of cheese. This stuff is not cheap to do. But after you get your project activated here, to start out on when you're developing it, they'll give you just 20 concurrent users for free while you're developing it, so you can actually test your stuff out before you actually go live. To actually go live, you do need to purchase Unity Plus or Unity Pro. So that is something to think about. But after that, it's actually pretty simple to set up. The first thing you'll need is this network manager, which is all part of uNet, which was, I think, introduced in 5.1, I think. And uNet is actually split into two parts. There's a high-level API and a low-level API. Their low-level API is basically all raw sockets. So it's built real close to the code, and it's actually closed source. Their high-level API is actually built on top of the low-level API, and that's all open source. All of this that I'm about to show you here is all done through the high-level API. And that's things like this network manager, there's network transforms, basically everything you need to sync up across the network and connect to their matchmaking service, which we'll get to in a second. So for the network manager, yeah, pretty sure you guys can see that here. It's don't destroy on load. So when you first load it up, it's going to be persistent throughout all of your scenes that you travel through. You want it to run in the background just so if you happen to lose focus for whatever reason, it doesn't close your session. The multiplayer model is built on a host-client model. So your host will be actually running the server itself as well, and the clients will all connect to that host. So for this scene here, actually this is the lobby manager. There's a offline scene and an online scene. The offline scene is what you see, it's basically your main menu. It's what you see before you actually connect online. And then the online scene is the scene that you are ported to once you actually connect. There is some network info here. Right now we are just connecting through the local host. This should still work through, unless firewalls are blocking us. You can actually connect through Unity's matchmaking service, which is part of what you're actually paying for. If you don't want to use matchmaking and you want to use port forwarding through your own routers, you can actually do a direct connect like the old BattleNet days in StarCraft and Doom. Just type in someone's IP address, you can actually connect to them. But that's a hassle that no one wants to really deal with. So they supply their own matchmaking server here. And actually we can try this here real quick. I don't know if this will actually work or not. But Drew, if you click on test 1.
Is that a scene?
Yep.
I see basic tutorial, lobby, and tutorial.
That'd be the basic tutorial.
Basic tutorial, okay.
So this is the super basic network manager that's just using the old school UE system, and we can just start a. Actually, what we can do is actually enable matchmaking because I don't know your IP address.
It's loading up now. So type in enable matchmaker.
Yeah, click enable matchmaker, and
oh, you're gonna do a room name.
yep. And the room name should be default.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if this will actually work. Oh snap!
Is that me? Hey, it's me.
Build Grand Theft Auto.
Done.
Early access right now.
So,
Coming soon.
as you can see, the second player there is kind of choppy, and that's just due to how they implemented their network transform syncing. I believe by default it's syncing like 20 times a second. I'm not sure what I have it actually set to, but you can have it set to whatever.
Stay still.
That's awesome.
There's actually no other gameplay going on right now, but
Dang it.
there's no physics going on right now.
Gotcha. I win.
Actually, there is some physics.
Tag, you're it.
Where
I'm out of here.
Right off the edge of the map.
Right off the
Yep.
edge.
Do it, follow your destiny.
all right, I'm super glad that worked. So I want to show you the player rigid body is what I'm using to actually steer the network identity, which is what the network manager uses to keep track of everything. You have actually two choices here. You can be server controlled or local player controlled. For your player character, you want the local player to be the authority on that. And then for like all your NPCs and effects and whatnot, you want that to be server controlled. Here is the network transform script here. Here you can say how often you want it to update. You can also tell it what to actually update. So right now we're just syncing the transform. But you can also sync rigid bodies if you want to do some crazy physics stuff. Or you can sync a character controller, which there's also a component for syncing animations. So if you want to do some more complex things through animating, you can do that too. For the movement, if you move less than this threshold here, it actually won't update. So that keeps you from, if your character happens to be like jiggling around, if you're having some weird physics things going on, you won't be flooding the network with, movement stuff that you don't even see moving. Now the snap threshold, if you actually move beyond 5 units here, it'll just snap you to where your new location is. So say your internet connection goes to crap for whatever reason, and you move, 5 meters that way, the next packet it gets, it'll just snap you right there instead of having to, lerp you over there or whatever. So that'll just help keep everything in sync. For the rotation, I've got this just rotating on the y-axis because it's just a car. So that's all I really need it to do. But if you're doing like spaceships or airplanes or whatever, you might want to rotate in other directions. But this limits which ones you can rotate because you don't want to update in full 3D because most games don't actually use that. And there's also the interpolation, which is just how it will use to alert between the two. And that's really about it for the basic. Now, for the lobby,
Let me load that up.
Yeah, go ahead and load up the lobby scene. This is actually a lot cooler and a lot closer to what you will actually be using in a real world game. So I'll show here. Crap, I'm not sure where this is actually going to. It's going to take me somewhere else. But this is just using the new Unity GUI for their lobby scene. I think I actually changed this to something else. But this will let you, pretty much the same thing. You can either create a manual connection, or you can actually do a dedicated server if you're like running on a virtualized, Amazon server or something like that. You can run it that way as well. Let's see.
Oh, I see it. Just connecting. I was able to see, I see 1 of 20 slots. Hit join. It says connecting, but then it kicks me back to the main menu. Now it says no servers found.
Alright, well, let me go through. Actually, do you have Do you have Telegram on here?
Telegram? Yeah, just type it in the search bar. We do have a Telegram chat room that we hang out in that we talk about. We link a lot of different game dev related stuff, a lot of VR stuff. So if you're interested in that, we can maybe put a link up there. Or what I'll do is I'll post the link in the meetup. It's literally like telegram.me/Memphis Game Devs. So I'll post that in the meetup so that you guys, if you are interested in talking to us, you can talk to us there. We also have a Slack channel too, but we don't use it that often.
Hey, not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this one should work. So I'm gonna make a test. There we go.
So you want me to do list servers again?
Yep. So with this, I can change my name.
It says client error 10.
What? Do you have one already open?
Do I have one already open?
The lobby test. Did you close it?
I'm running inside of Unity.
Oh no, run the. There's a.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see it. Yeah. Don't know if it's doing anything or not. I think I may have opened it like 4 times. Yep, I sure did. It's loading up now. List servers. Join. Just connecting. Oh, there I am.
So you can see here, this house here is a local player, and the globe here is an internet player. So we could do, couch co-op here if you wanted to do more players. And you can see his name, and if you click the color square there, you can change the color.
Oh, I think I have to. I've already hit ready, so. Oh, there we go.
Got someone else join up? I don't know who that is.
Dun, dun, dun. That's me.
Is that you guys?
That's all me.
That's all you?
Yeah.
She said kicking.
Permaban. Whoa.
Ship it. Oh, Devin did.
Oh, I'm all of these guys. I control all the players.
Oh, God.
You dang dirty cheater.
Devin, I think you broke the game.
Yeah. The problem is,
Oh.
no.
That's right, someone kicked the power cord.
That's pretty cool.
So, how this actually works. Yay!
For some reason, my power cord causes those speakers to buzz.
Oh, it's actually a lot louder than I thought. I accidentally hit your power button too.
You cut it off?
I think so. I didn't hit it though. It just kind of. Oh no, I didn't. Okay, no, I didn't.
All right, so I just put in 3 spawn points or 4 spawn points here. All you need to create a spawn point is to create an empty game object, and you put the network start position, and then the network manager here will just use this spawn info here. The player prefab is the player the prefab is going to get spawned by the player when they connect, and the player spawn here, it will just pick, for right now it's set to random, so it'll pick a random spawn point to spawn you at. There's also round robin, so if you're doing like a first person shooter, it will spawn you at each one in turn, so you don't always spawn at the same place. The other thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to have these registered spawnable prefabs. So whenever you want to spawn a bullet or an enemy or anything that you need the network to actually spawn on the other clients, you need that to be listed in here. And these are just game objects with network identities on them, and that's all they need to be.
This is not necessarily stuff that's like in the scene itself, like from the
No.
beginning. It's stuff that gets created.
Anything that
during,
gets spawned by
Okay.
the actual network manager.
Gotcha.
And the other thing is what you'll need is for the lobby scene, there is that is not in this one. The only other thing you'll need here is on the lobby manager, you will need this network lobby hook script. And all this does is it will take your lobby player, which it was just your name and color that you saw in the lobby scene, and that will transfer that to your game player. And all that is just done right here. We'll just get the lobby player, it will assign the username to the local player and the color to the local player. So this is where you would do character customization. If you want to change character prefabs or character classes or anything like that, your loadouts, that would all be done through this here. And that is basically it. There's more complicated stuff when you're talking about running methods on the server and on the client. There's remote procedure calls you can do. There's sync lists and sync variables, but I think we can save that for another time.
Yeah, there's a lot to fit in for networking.
Yeah, networking is a pretty huge topic.
Does Unity make a server available when you buy their multiplayer package?
They don't make a server available. What you're actually paying for is their relay server. So that's what you're using to punch through the NAT for matchmaking services.
So that's all it is.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
So
So
you
if
still
you,
have to have your own server.
yes, if you're not actually running your own matchmaking or anything like that, you don't actually have to pay for anything. So if you're just using it on an Amazon server or Azure or something like that, you can just connect to that directly, and yeah, you don't have to pay for anything for that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you use Steam's matchmaking service. You wouldn't use Unity's. You just use Steam, for example.
Yes, though I'm not sure how because all of their stuff is locked behind their paywall, so I don't know how that actually works. But theoretically, yes, you could use Steam matchmaking, which I would love to do.
All right. Thanks for coming out, guys. Like I said, we do this once a month, second Thursday every month. I'll post the Telegram chat link in the Meetup channel and put it on Facebook as well. We also
for all you students that are in the ACM Slack channel, we also have a game dev channel there as well. So I don't know if any of the MGD guys are in there, but I'll invite you guys to it. Okay. Yeah, so thanks for coming out, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, there you go.